often, but not exclusively in war. Not so long ago, ethnomusicologists came to acknowledge at large that music is not inherently peaceful. Jonathan Stock. 20 years earlier, Svanjo Petan singled out three primary functions of music in warfare, not totally different from the triple model by the composer Edmund Stone Duncan, 1914. I'm sometimes repeating an article from the Skopje, which was published in the Skopje. Some overlapping can be happen. So, as so often, academic folklorists precede ethnomusicology in theory. Folklorist Barbara Kirschenblatt-Gimlet, 1989, posed the rhetorical question, is folklore ever innocent? And in 1993, Rolf Brednich and Walter Hartinger published the proceedings of the 29. Deutsche Volkskunde-Kongress in Passau, Gewalt in der Kultur, Violence in Culture. What is violence? According to the World Health Organization, the intentional use of physical force and power that either results or has a high likelihood of resulting in injury, death, psychological harm, maldevelopment, or deprivation. Maybe, thank you so much. So, maybe that's not very logical, but the physical force should also include here psychological violence. But there is a problem with extending the concept of violence too much. This is a suitable corrective against the idea of structural violence, which can be everything you don't like in a society, or even epistemic violence. Here, a source from anti-feminism, undoing theory, and so on, the violence of Anglo-American feminist theory. So no theories also are considered to be violent, and it's better not to doing theories, as I understand. Okay, now conflict and violence. We don't have valid definitions in ethnomusicology, unfortunately. More in sociology, but ethnomusicology is not very attentive to conflict sociology. Ralph Dahrendorf, Max Weber, so say the classics. But sociologist Alberto Melucci, he defines, thank you. But, we are talking about conflict. Conflict and violence has to be distinguished quite clearly. But the conflict definitions are lacking, regardless to really rich literature about this topic. So Melucci, a conflict is defined by a struggle between two actors seeking to appropriate resources regarded by each as valuable. For an event to constitute a conflict, the actors must be definable in terms of a common reference system. This is very important. And there must be something at stake to which both implicitly or explicitly refer. So is this the conflict of these two nice guys? Yes, it is, because Achilles and Agamemnon agree that the slave belongs to the warrior of a certain social position. The conflict is this warrior Agamemnon or Achilles. Is this a conflict? I don't think so. The common reference system is very very narrow, except that they accept the value of money. Okay, now it becomes not so funny. Is this a conflict? The slave trade in East and Central Africa? I would say so. Where is the common reference system? If sometimes one actor doesn't recognize the other as a human being, or nearer to the Slavic world, Turkmen raid. This is from Eyewitness by William Simpson. So these people on the horses, these two persons, they don't have a conflict. The same here, a Kazakh raid in the Volga German colony of Marienthal in late 19th century. What is definitely a conflict are modern territorial conflicts, as in Kosovo, for example, because here the common reference system is the preconditions of a state, according to George Jelinek, three-element theory: population, territory, and authority, which informed the Montevideo Convention of the Rights and Duties of the States. So, but according to this is maybe not, maybe common knowledge, maybe not, but not always widely accepted, the importance of the state monopoly of violence. It's a condition for any state, democratic or not. So I was a bit surprised about Samuel Araujo referring to alarming references to the existence of a criminal or extra-legal state within the state in Brazil. They are ideologically charged, demonizing image. In a global perspective, precisely such political instability gives way to the reemergence of slavery and slave trading in the Muslim world. I will return to this. Agents of violence, as represented in ethnomusicological theory, conflict parties in Yugoslavian war, in Ireland, criminal violence, Araujo, police violence, and prominently stock state violence, not least in neoliberal nations like the US and UK. The nation state remains a profound enabler of actual as well as institutional, invisible, structural, and systemic violence in the modern world. And he speaks about the cultural brutalities of colonial states. Some corrective of this a bit one-sided position is Steven Pinker's Better Angel of Our Nature, Why Violence Has Declined. That's a sad irony that the Ukrainian translation was published in the first days of the war. And Pinker immediately say he didn't say this is progress, this process cannot be returned. Cannot be go in the other direction. But he identifies different. Just a moment. Oh, I have lost my text. Sorry. Okay, so according to Pinker, the historical event or event series with the highest death toll was the Second World War, 55,000 millions, followed by Mao Zedong's Great Leap and the Cultural Revolution and the Mongol conquest. So the 20th century seems to be already overrepresented. However, if you put these horrible numbers in relation to the general population, which tells about the personal risk of being a victim of violence. For this reason, it is important. Then things look about different. And Pinker's point is that the main actor of violence in history is not the national state. So the popular meme among anarchists and radical libertarians, according to which governments are the main cause of preventable deaths, he is challenging. As he argues, it isn't governments in general that kill large numbers of people, but only a handful of governments of a specific type, referring to the actors already mentioned. What is more important in our context is the effect not only of large-scale events, but the deeply rooted practices of warrior cultures and robber economy. Again, Pinker, it's the sneaky raids, not the noisy battles, that kills in large numbers. This is a sad history, notably in the Slavic world, as there is reason that the word Slavic comes from slave. So the etymology of Slavic, of slave, comes from Slavic, because large numbers of Slavic people were enslaved. In the Crimea, were 2 million of victims in the border side to Kazakhstan. So And there are estimations that for any sold slave, much more members of his or her communities died during the raids or the transports. Steven Pinker estimates the death toll of the Middle East slave trade with 90 millions from 17th to 19th century. So, agents of mass violence in pre-modern scenarios, tribal fights, slave hunters in Africa, and at the borderlands of the modern empires, and witch hunts in Africa. This is particularly important for ethnomusicology. There is one article I've never seen cited in ethnomusicology claiming that the freedom songs of the anti-apartheid movement caused an escalation of witch hunting and witch burning in the Venda homeland. This is a very long and sad history. But surprisingly, John Blacking, who did fieldwork in the 50s, when this issue of witch hunting, witch burning was in any newspaper, it was a great public issue. He called the Venda there are pacifists at heart. So in-group and out-group behavior is a thing which we should consider here. So idea that the society has to be fulfilled of love and harmony is sometimes very dangerous, because somebody will not share the harmony and then the problems begin. Okay, war is represented in folklore of the Slavic world, finally. As always in folk music, everything depends on the genre. There are clearly negative attitudes toward military service, extremely long military service in the Russian Empire, in record laments and soldier songs. You will not find many hurrah patriotic songs, probably only in the late 19th century. As Lev Tolstoy said, I cannot recognize any patriotism among the common people, except was it learned in the school. So that's about national and regional identity. So also negative attitude to war in lyrical peasant songs, because from a perspective of the peasant, war is a disastrous intrusion in the common economic, private and family life. There's one exception, the Cossacks. Don, Kuban, Terek, it's no principal difference. The Cossacks are a deeply rooted warrior culture, warfare, looting, mass rape, particularly. Both were often agents and after 1917 also victims of genocides. There are a popular Cossack song celebrating robbery against the traders from Astrakhan. By the way, I like many Cossack songs, but not the text generally. One of the most cruel chapters of the Russian Civil War are the massacres in Jewish settlements from 1914 to 1919. During the Civil War, also during the reign of Petliura, who was in the Ukraine, who was probably not personally responsible. What is important for a cultural perspective, this were really ritualized public violence. Irina Astashkevich wrote The Carnival of Violence, Development of the Pogrom Script or the Perfect Weapon, Mass Rape as Public Spectacle. So, mass rape can be sort of hard to pronounce as a gratification of the warrior, but also a political task. We have a record from the Second World War that we have two tasks, to fight and to revenge. This was official politics. And what mean revenge is quite well known, maybe not always discussed in public, but the parallels to what has happened now in the Ukraine are absolutely horrible. I cannot talk about this because our Ukrainian colleagues know so much better what I'm talking about, just to take it as a phenomenon with these two dimensions. So are there parallels in nomadic warrior cultures. Because the Cossacks in military tactics uh, inherited a lot of the Central Asian nomads terminology, maybe also the balalaika, by the way, which was incredibly popular among the Cossacks. That's a totally different story. There's a critical account of Yelena Akladnikova, a feminist anthropologist from St. Petersburg. She wrote in 2004, in traditional culture of nearly all nomadic society, the sexual act is incorporated in the context of strategies of warfare. Male sexuality is expected to be used for installing relations of domination and subordination, mass rape and killing women during acts of war. So, in sentiment of violence, next, totally different from the recruit laments, different genre, Southern Slavic Balkan epics. After the shock of the Yugoslavian war, Reinhard Lauer wrote a very polemic article, Das Wüten der Mythen, so the ravage of the myths, and claiming that the myth of the wolf, of the Haiduks, of Prince Marko in Kosovo, mobilize violent ethno-national aggression. But he talked only about the Serbian epos, which is maybe much most prominent, but judging by Jaška Primorac and Joško Kaleta and others, this is not exclusively a Serbian issue. And Reinhard Lauer is a philologist. He analyzed the epics, and these are ethnomusicologists and anthropologists who observed the direct impact of the epic repertoires to warfare in 1990s in the Yugoslavian war. Also, Zdravko Blažeković has shown that you find the gusle not only in the hands of Serbian soldiers and war criminals, but it served as a populist icon in the clerical fascist period of Croatian history, the Ustaša regime. One a bit more optimistic point, somehow in line with Steven Pinker's idea of the humanitarian revolution, as he calls this this process. It's an interesting account by Arseny Mironov, Belina on the Russian frontier, and he shows how the figure of Alyosha Popovich opens a new role model, distant from the pre-Christian pagan epic hero who is very active, very aggressive, very strong. He eats a lot. He had many sexual actions, including aggressive. And Alyosha Popovich, he's more the Christian knight. So this idea of chivalry is very clearly pronounced here. So let me conclude with a continuum of social evaluation of war. There's a position that war is a positive value in itself, a way a man can show himself, an important activity, so even honorable activity. The Iroquois, about 12th century, when hunt declined in importance, they looked for another field of activity where young men can seeking to make a name for themselves. Or the Cossacks, again, in Taras Bulba, the Cossack Kashubai says a young man cannot live without war. Next, justification of war as elimination of whatever evil. Martin Luther. Okay. What else is war but punishing wrong and evil? Or Friedrich Engels. The Austrian Germans and Magyars will be set free and wreak a bloody revenge on the slave barbarians. The general war which will then break out will schmeth the Slavic Sonderbund, and so on, and wipe out these petty hidebound nations down to their very names. Völkermüll, people's waste, they were called the minorities in Europe, which have to be extinguished either physically or culturally. Or the next world war will result in the disappearance from the face of the earth, not only of reactionary classes and dynasties, but only of entire reactionary people. And this too is a step forward. So the genocidal tradition of Marxism had its beginning exactly here. So, or Vladimir Solovyov, the sense of war, imperialist idea that war is a good thing because it will lead to a global order. Here's Solovyov. Okay. Third, peace is desirable but hardly possible for an expanding empire. Civis pacem parabellum, Roman and many other empires. Next, war is fundamentally evil, but military violence is the nation state ultima ratio of self-defense, as we can learn nowadays if you haven't learned it before. This is a modern consensus. And there is next, the last step, war, military violence is never justified. Buddhism, radical pacifism. Okay, I'm already running out of time. I just would call for a more objective, unbiased account of violence in culture and as culture, and not only refer to the usual suspects of the post-colonial theory. And we have to face uncomfortable facts. The dilemma of valuing every culture and human rights. How we can think about cultures who didn't accept the existence of any human being. So these are very hard questions, but somehow we have to face it. Maybe the solution is restricting relativism to expressive culture. It makes things a bit easier, including the Cossack songs. I had the great pleasure to sing with you yesterday. As expressive culture, I understand them, and we can learn a lot of them about interaction in an ensemble, but that doesn't mean that you have to like some basic realities connected with this culture. Thank you very much.